Welcome to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. I'm your host, Casey Garrett, and together we'll be discovering and learning from inspiring voices of healers, medicine keepers, and visionaries. Every episode, we'll explore the world of health, vibrant wellness, and natural medicine for a new era of human society. Welcome to today's episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm really excited to be here today with Brenna Gebauer. Brenna is a person I could say so very much about this woman. She is one of the people I most admire in the space. And I think I'd like to introduce her by saying, sharing for her and for you all, one of the things I hear most commonly said about her after people interact with her, and they come and they say, is she like that all the time? And they're referring to her presence and her kindness and her gentleness. And yes, I can say yes. I have been in various situations and circumstances and gatherings with her, and I can attest to say she is that way all the time. And so many times I've shared with you guys that the medicine is just, there's the practice with the medicine, and then the real practice is our day-to-day lives, and it's weaving the medicine path into our daily lives in the way we do things big and small. And Brenna is such a beautiful example of someone who really, I have witnessed her filter all of life through her heart. And she kind of holds life, just day-to-day life, with the same presence that she holds her clients, which is really, I think, to my mind, one of the most authentic qualities, and why nature wants these medicines in the hands of our healers and our guides to inspire people to not just explore medicine work, but to explore a medicine life. And lifestyle. So thank you, Brenna, so much for being with all of us and sharing. I'm so curious, of all the times I've spoken with you, I've never heard your kind of origin story. So when you kind of were first called to the medicine, when you had an inkling that this was your path. So if you don't mind starting off and sharing that with us, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, happy to. And just want to reflect, my heart is so juicy right now. So thank you for that beautiful introduction and reflection. That question initially for me had a very different response than when I really started unpeeling certain things and looking back at, or coming closer to my natural self, I guess. And I was raised in a very rural area. I was raised up in Northern California, Shasta County, and I was basically raised by earth. I was that kid that got to go out and just play and watch caterpillars become butterflies and the seasons changing. And I also had a grandmother that would use plants for healing, not psychedelics, but just like aloe vera instead of Neosporin, things of that nature. So the idea of working with plants in this way has just been, it feels like it's part of my DNA, what I've been enculturated into from a young age. As it pertains more so to this and how I came to working with these, it was not because I was looking for psychedelics. I was looking for myself. And mushrooms found me. And I really appreciate the nature of my intentions and saying, okay, I'm ready to go there within myself. And it was really a few different threads that came into my life simultaneously. The first was really diving into meditation. The other was exploring different frameworks of spirituality than the ones that I was taught. And then all of a sudden, I think through just opening myself, mushrooms in a very beautiful, elegant way came into my life. And so it was years of working with them intentionally, and just the doors that started to open through it, that I'm having conversations like the one I'm having with you, and the ability to be with others as they too explore that journey for themselves.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. You are such a beautiful example of someone who kind of lived a very different, had a very different profession for some time, before you stepped into healing arts practice and guideship. And we have so many people start microdosing and start on the medicine path, and they're in certain professions, but they get called. They're like, I'm being called to do this work, and I don't know if I'm allowed to, if I have the background to do it. And so my answer to that is absolutely yes. We all have an innate healer, and we're kind of in this moment where we all have to call upon that in us. So can you talk a little bit about that transition from,
the previous life,
normal life? Yeah, please.
Yeah. It was not easy for me, but not because of anything external. It was all the parts of myself that had resistance to it for whatever reason. So I built a 17-year career based on the check all these boxes in life and you will be happy. And so I checked the boxes and I kept rising the corporate ladder and kind of got to a place where I recognized that the next step was still just another step that wasn't filling my soul. And that was part of the looking for myself process that I was speaking to before. So it was years of doing this work before I started feeling like, okay, I need to make changes to the foundation of my life, the identity that I have built around who I am. Because at that point, it was my identity. It was how people knew me. It was most of my social engagements. And when I made the decision, it was really scary because I was letting go of the safe harbor and all of the things that society had said. This is safety, this is success, this is happiness. And beyond that, when I started sharing with people that were close to me the idea of what I was considering, I got a lot of resistance. And I already had an awareness that part of what keeps me from myself is the noise from the external sources that make me question on a rational level what's right for me. Whereas when I would ask my heart and my soul, like, what's true for me now? And it's not to say that that career that I built was not true for me at a different point, but what's true for me now, I was getting a very different answer from the one that my mind and that my external reflections were telling me. So when I made the decision, actually, I think it's important to share this. When I knew what my truth was because of this work, and I did not align with it in the decisions I was making in my life, it became hard. Anxiety became a very present experience for me. And I think that's one of the things that's important to know about this sort of work is if you come to these awarenesses and you resist the alignment, there's a possibility that life is going to get harder. And so for me, I went through that period. And during that time, it was a lot of numbing and avoiding and seeking professional help that was leading to a path of taking, daily medication for anxiety. And for me, I knew my truth was at a root cause that I needed to make fundamental changes around. So I made the decision to turn down the noise. And I did that by doing 10 days of silence of Vipassana. And I did that because I really wanted to ensure for myself that I was making this completely with internal agency, that there was no external thing, even if it is, the idea that I took a psychedelic and the psychedelic was opening this up. Yes, but I wanted it to be 100% my agency. And I got a lot of clarity there. And 2 days after, even though they say, don't make any big decisions after expanded states for at least 30 days. This was a decision that had been in the making for months. I left my career. I liken it to the fact that I had been holding on to the wheel of life more so like white knuckling it. And I finally just said, I'm going to see what happens if I let go for a little while. And from there, that's when things started opening up in ways. Like I feel like I had for a very long time looked at the door that I wanted to go through or that I was told I was supposed to go through, and I would do anything to get on the other side of it. So I had this very narrow view based on all of the conditioning. And then I put myself in, like, I'm in the center of the room. What doors want to open? And when I started looking at how many more options I had and how much less resistance there was, that to me has led to certainly diminished anxiety, a lot more ease, and frankly, trust in the path that whatever shows up is meant to be. So that's how I made the transition. And for those that are in that place, trust yourself. But I completely understand that it is not an easy decision to make either. So I honor that process and what can come up along the way.
I love that so beautifully framed and reframed. We see that so often is to take that big leap
Mm-hmm.
into the unknown. It sometimes requires the big leap for
Mm-hmm.
all those doors to open. And
Mm-hmm.
the more you
Mm-hmm.
practice it, that's a big part of people's ongoing medicine practice, is you realize you can build that. You
Mm-hmm.
build that strength within yourself the more you practice surrender and trust.
Oh, yeah.
The universe will come meet you more and more quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yeah. So
I
when
want
you
to share a
okay,
story on that.
please, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. When I left my career, like, speaking of surrender and trust, I'd never been on a frozen lake before, but I literally drove up a mountain, went on an isolated frozen lake, and just walked out in the middle and drew like hearts with my snow boots as I listened to avalanches happening in the mountains. And I was like, this is my version of surrender and trust. If the lake holds me, then this is a sign. So here I am to tell the story.
Beautiful. What was so in that in between state where your heart and your spirit makes that decision, um, and then the doors open, now that you are, you have been a practicing guide for some time, looking back, would you say it's more, what has been the most meaningful in the making of who you have become? Has it been your personal practice with the medicine? Has it been learning through witnessing the experiences of others? Has it been more of the education that you've received and mentorship? I would love to hear now that you can reflect back on some of those things.
Yeah. I feel like the foundation was my personal work with the medicine. I do want to offer that I had been sitting in communities, sitting with myself, working with facilitators for close to 5 years before I even made the decision. And it was through, journey work that I finally felt like I was at a place where I had seen and experienced enough on my own end to feel in alignment to support others in their journeys. And at that point, what I have found to be supportive for me is to put myself in as many rooms with people that I had respect for, to learn from them. And sometimes that is through education. And sometimes that is through peer consultations and doing councils and sitting with other facilitators. And those are very rich experiences to learn from and glean from. For me, I have also found that the experiential piece of holding space with another is, you cannot learn that in a theoretical framework. At least that's my perspective. I think I have heard people say you are limited to how far you can take another based on how far you've gone yourself. And I believe there is some truth to that. It doesn't mean you have to have had all of the exact same experiences that someone has in their own journey work. I think that's impossible because it's an independent journey for each soul. But really to know, like, when someone is in that place, that you can hold it. And to know that place is to experience it personally. And the more I facilitate and the more people I get to witness in their own expanded states and their own journey work, the more humbled I become about being in it with another. So I guess to recap it, it's holistic for me. It's having a lot of time in your own facilitation, seeing other styles of facilitation, different facilitators, building trusting relationships, getting curious about community. I think community is so vital for people in this work. And then when the time is right and you are potentially, in a space of which facilitating for others is an invitation that feels aligned, then that is a very rich place of learning. So I don't think it's been one. And I will say it all started with me. And that's kind of an orientation I hold for this in general.
Beautiful. There are there's so many people being called right now to medicine practice. Part of it is certainly the media attention for sure, but also I think there's something, it's the earth itself is calling a lot of people, and they can't quite put their finger on what it is, but that's what it is. What would you say with people that come to you who are called, but they're new, they're brand new in many ways? What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you see versus what people think it's going to be versus what it actually is that would be helpful to them, that the media might not be portraying accurately? Yeah.
Yeah. I tell people this the evening before their journey, that the most common thing I hear, even after we've done work around managing expectations and being open to whatever shows up, is that was not what I expected. And we get to laugh about it because we've already talked about it beforehand. And I don't think you can know what to expect. I don't know what to expect. I know how the journeys can go, but like what's going to show up for each individual. So I think that's kind of the cosmic joke, right? In some ways, like we don't know necessarily where it's going to go that's going to bring in the awareness that helps us have these transformations in our life. That being said, I do feel from the framework of what I am seeing now versus what I was seeing several years ago, there has been a major shift in the way that people are approaching this. And I think it's really important to make this a liberative process, an empowering process for people versus I'm just going to take another thing that may take away the dis-ease or to solve the depression or the anxiety or the stress. And that to me is really foundational to be part of the preparation process, is to make it something that tools are built in. You touched on it before, like this is more so the tiny habits that are built into life that can be supportive of making these transitions possible. And to elaborate, I feel as though it can be more damaging for someone if all of a sudden, let's say they have anxiety as a driver, right? And anxiety is something that is very important in their decision making. If anxiety all of a sudden goes away, then all of a sudden there can be a completely different myriad of emotions that come forward. So the idea of, I have a few people recently, like when they started this work, they would probably give away a limb to have a certain part of themselves, a certain emotion no longer present. And it's more so recalibrating the relationship to the emotion so that it's an invitation for wholeness of self. So, the media is streaming and saying this will make depression no longer an issue. Depression goes away. To have any part of you go away, per se, especially on an emotional framework, I think is something that I orient to, and making it feel like, let's just see if we can make friends with these parts of ourselves that currently seem like adversaries.
Beautifully, beautifully said. Absolutely. Can you share a little bit about your approach with people? If they're new to you in your practice, it's so interesting when people get to that point where they're ready to journey and kind of step into initiatory doses with the medicine. encourage and invite them to explore other guides, based on energy,
Mhm.
resonance, connection, the way they hold space. And don't base it on geography and who's
Mhm.
like closest to you. Really take the time, because for you, for your first time, in many cases, it's going to be a once in a lifetime experience. It's up there. And so every guide I know is so different in the way
Mm.
they hold space and their approach. So some people love hosting in their own space. Others go to the client space. So yeah, if you could take us through kind of what your
Sure.
approach and kind of arc that you hold people through.
Yeah. Well, there's always the initial get to know each other, energetic conversation, because I think it's really important to, for me, the energy that I want to bring into this, that I hold myself to, is co creation of this journey with another. And I want to build trust to invite that they are in a safe, non judgmental space of which my energy is going to be unconditional love for whatever shows up. And I find that having a preparation process that builds to the journey is supportive of that. So, generally, it's a 7 week arc. Um, there's a 3 week preparation process where we do kind of like a constellated intake of life that brought us to this work today. And then in the weeks leading up, I find that when one makes the decision to do this kind of work, the subconscious is like, oh, we have an invitation to be seen. And so things will start to surface. And that's a rich playground to be able to start building the tools and to build a connection between myself and another. Intention setting is part of it, but really it's like it's seeing what wants to surface in the process. Um, for some people, journal prompts can be really supportive to watch different videos and learn about shadow work, but there is not a formula for me. It's really engaging with the individual and what will be something that allows them to feel like this is their journey and I'm there to support it. After the preparation process, I do what is essentially about a 40-hour ceremony. It's an evening before, which is, I'm one of my love languages is nourishing people on a multitude of different levels. So often I'll make a meal and we'll settle in energetically. We'll have dinner together just to make sure that they're nourished going into the ceremony day. We'll talk about the things that can come up and how to navigate them. Like letting go of control, for example, or dancing with one's shadows. And I try and do that in such a way where I'm not going to tell them how their journey is going to be, but uh, give them insight so that the mind can kind of let go of the questions and the journey can drop into all the parts of oneself as as whatever it's going to be. So also creating a safe container, and I guess this is maybe a bit nuanced, but like ethical boundaries are really important for me in this work so that everyone is really like fully in consent, fully aware of what's going to happen. um, I work in moderately what I consider to be high doses. I know every guide has different levels of which they work with. I feel as though if someone's coming to me, they want to go pretty deep within themselves. So the invitation is to go inward. I mirror as much with the individual from what is often seen in the therapeutic model, the eye shades, the curated playlist. And these are all invitations, again, for there's no cookie cutter how this looks, but there's a reason that we're seeing that in the research. And also their spiritual framework or their orientation to their history that's going to be worked with. So like an example would be recently I worked with someone who is Wiccan and they wanted to have their high priest come in and build a container prior to them so they could take the medicine in the circle. And it was just beautiful to be invited into this and to witness it as part of their journey. And I guess that ties into, for me, the co-creative process means that I really want to engage in what's going to be supportive for someone to open up, whether that's geographic location, being in their home. I worked in a yurt on top of a mountain. I've worked in the desert in RV. So like there is no, it looks like this when it comes to me. It's like, what is going to be supportive for the individual? And the ceremony is a full day, and then really just like re-nourishing, making sure that the individual has landed, and then we start the integration the next morning, which is, I think, really important, because if you're going back into your life after being in these, what some people consider to be peak experiences, I want to give you as many tools of what can show up on the other side of the journey, which there's always more. It's not just the time with the medicine, how to engage with other people in their life and talking about this. And then we have 3 integration sessions, and those don't have to be linear. It doesn't have to be weekly. Some people want to do it, 6 months later when more things are starting to show up, and see how it is. So I consider this to be soul work and really creating a bond with people, of which, we'll stay in communication for however long it feels right for them. So that's my arc, and there's always flexibility to that depending on the individual. But I have found that really allows for both of us to build something beautiful to be able to explore.
Lovely. Yeah. One of the things you shared, so Brenna had come into our microdosing community about a year ago. And one of the things you had shared really stayed with me and many others, which was to bring, connect with the earth in some way, literally through this process, whether you plant a tree or get a bulb or, plant flowers in your yard, because the practice is so subtle. We're so, as humans, desensitized by so much input, all the time, that we miss the power of subtlety and the daily seeping into the medicine space. And when you have something with the earth, a connection to the earth to watch and witness, you can really see your own growth mirrored in the growth of life, and see this plant 6 months later that was just a little bulb, is now this beautiful bloom, full of vitality and life. And it so mirrors the process and the medicine path for people. I thought that advice was so, so beautiful. Mushrooms in particular are such a relational medicine that it really takes its relationship with ourselves, it's our relationship with others, to see how far we have grown and expanded. And sometimes we can only see that when it's relative to something else. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Prompt.
It's been a beautiful gift for myself. I'm working with someone right now, and they're planting a forgiveness garden. And since it's spring, it feels like a really lovely time to be able to plant these seeds of forgiveness of different things in their life. So especially working with earth-based medicines, however that can show up, having an altar, I have an altar on the dash of my car of feathers from different places, or tiny little pine cones that are a reminder that tiny little pine cone turns into a beautiful redwood. So I do love that you and I both have that connection to the daily process and the slow progression versus the immediacy that's often called forth, in different parts of life. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I would love to shift into something I know you're very, very passionate about, have for some time, and it's beautiful to watch it all coming to fruition with Epic. So I would love for you to talk about kind of the inspiration behind that, what it's for, what Epic stands for, and kind of what you hope for this global framework. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the invitation. I have wanted to talk about ethics as it pertains to this work for a very long time. And, I believe in setting intentions. So I have been part of many different frameworks, of which ethics has come up in a way where it's very important to have the ability to talk about things, and not always in the best way. So before, and for those maybe that don't know, ethics is now a very big topic as it pertains to psychedelics. And I wanted to be in these conversations and started a thread so that, the like-minded people, we could have conversations about it. And along the way, it became a very hot topic in the space. So Dr. Sandra and I are two people who love to be in those conversations. And it started with a workshop because, unlike legal, ethical is very different. And I think there is the nature to have a hierarchical structure of somebody tells you how to do these things. And as it pertains to ethics and also this work and how we're shifting so quickly to above ground and still having practitioners that are working underground, I don't believe that model is going to be supportive. And there's plenty of evidence around how many ethical guidelines are out there, and people that are working within them are really not. It's just kind of a very static body of work. I think ethics are very alive. I feel the way to foster them is in community. And EPIC stands for ethical practices in international communities. Because I don't look at, as you don't look at the geography of a facilitator, I also don't think psychedelics are just here in the United States. They have roots everywhere. So to honor that and to teach people who are curious and to co-create, really, because what we're doing is we're holding community engagements where we talk about whatever's showing up, whether it's accountability or how to build ethical communities, how to build guidelines into your own community, and really use that as a process where here we are, we're just an umbrella, and we're offering space for individual communities across the globe to be in conversation about how ethics shows up for them. And that has been such a rich area of understanding and nuance, and it makes me feel alive to see so many people wanting to engage in that way. The other side of that is to create a space for people to be heard who want to have conversations or have been in situations that make them feel like potentially something unethical has happened and to not know where to go. Unfortunately, what I have witnessed in a lot of this is it comes from power dynamics. So often people who are in positions of power in some ways have taken advantage of that, and someone is left feeling like, I don't know where to go because this is my community leader or this is my guide, and I'm working in a rainbow space, so I don't know who to talk to. So we want to create a container for people to be able to feel heard, to feel safe, and to offer outlets of support that can help them as they process what they've experienced. So those are the two branches thus far that we are fostering, and also knowing that this is something that is going to continue to evolve, being open to whatever shows up and engaging in that way.
Thank you so much for your work in this space. It's so important right now. And as things grow, and the speed too has a lot to do with it too. It's that pushing sensation of need, even when it's well-intentioned sometimes, is really one of the things I think we can contribute to ethics, even in all of our own little ways, is to slow down, in all things, and be thoughtful, and don't be pressured or pressuring to come to things sooner than you're ready to come to things. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Honor.
One of the other things I so love and admire in you is it comes up for people very frequently as people start their medicine path for one thing often, for better cognition or inflammation. And then they start on their path and all of these other gifts start to happen, and they're growing, they're lightening, they're expanding. And with that, your life, as you change on the inside, your life on the outside changes and shifts. And that can be as challenging as it is beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
because the architecture of your life and your relationships and your family structures and dynamics are what they are. And here you are, the one changing. And so people along the way realize, like, all of these things are straining and pushing or chafing, and there's friction there that wasn't there before. And then it occurs to them, it's like, oh, I'm the one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one that's growing and changing. It's me. It's not everybody else.
Right.
And so with that, I so admire your ability, because to be a guide and a medicine keeper, it takes a lot of devotion and sacrifice in some ways, because in order to hold space for people, you have to be so intentional with your boundaries, your clarity, your energy, you have to be clear as much as you can to be in alignment with the medicine, to be able to hold these medicines for other people. And it can be challenging to live kind of the human 3D reality, right? And so for some guides, it's really necessary to almost live like a hermit, ashram like, where they're in nature most of the time. They're not in the human realm most of the time. You very, very beautifully managed to navigate both worlds really, really beautifully. So while those are two different thoughts I just shared, like, they weave together in that when people are moving and they're growing and expanding in their process, how do you invite people and encourage people to grow within their existing lives versus necessarily need to jump and catapult out of their life altogether? Right?
Yeah. I really appreciate that, because I consider myself to be pretty pragmatic about this work. I often say I'm woo. I'm not woo woo. Because being in both realities is making it so that you can integrate in your life. You have your career, you have your family, you have your friends. Like, these are really important parts of the journey. And it doesn't mean that there isn't potential for there to be change within it. But, I look at this as the incremental, and then the big, and then the incremental, and then the big, as far as changes often makes it more plausible. For me, I feel as though how I have managed it is through community, having community around me that allows me to be able to still feel like I'm in engagement and not needing to be a hermit per se, but to also give myself the time to just go inward, and balancing out both of those things. So for people that are going on this journey, I think it's important to figure out what feels manageable with this work, because this is not just with psychedelics. This is changing habits in general. If it doesn't feel manageable and it doesn't feel doable, there's going to be resistance somewhere along the way to making it happen. So as I orient to this, it's like, what are the steps that can be taken that are going to feel right? And really breaking it down in that way, and doing that for myself. I forget sometimes that for me, it started with a timer for seeing if I could sit for 3 minutes in meditation. And I had to go back to that reminder. I was like, 3 minutes seemed like a really long time. And from there, it went to 10 days of silence. So it is understanding for each of us, whatever that starting point is, and then building from there. And that's how I want to offer support for individuals as they move along this path, is like, can we break this down so it feels manageable? And then you can build upon all of that, because it is a building, as is this work. It's like one layer at a time, and seeing what's ready to surface. So that's, I guess, my way of holding both realities, is understanding that they are both very real, and wanting to give attention and nurture both of them simultaneously.
Lovely. Yeah, I know I share that analogy all the time, as we're both meditators, and prior to embarking in medicine practice, had established a meditation practice. And I use that analogy all the time with our microdosing community that, if you've never meditated before, but you read about that it's good for you, and you've never sat on the cushion before and signed up for a 10-day silent retreat with no experience, like that's going to be a really, really challenging experience in all kinds of ways for you, versus if you say a year from now, I want to go on a 10-day retreat and I'm going to start with 3 minutes. Right. I'm going to start with my little 3-minute timer today, right, which is aligning that similar to microdosing and starting a practice. You might even, your medicine path precedes even being in relationship with the medicine. You know, it can be regulating your nervous system, doing some shadow work, doing some therapy and parts work. So I share that because right now there's such an emphasis on, okay, I heard about this. Can I do a journey next weekend? As if it's more of like an attraction or an experience of something to obtain, versus laying the foundation. So I would love for you to share what you have seen for people, say when they do say, I'd love to plan to prepare myself to do a journey experience 6 months from now or a year from now. What are those things that you have seen be most profoundly beneficial? And also maybe share some things that you've seen people either not do or do that kind of impacts their ultimate experience.
Yeah, beautiful question. And I really I think it ties into so much of what you've been sharing around slowing down and the nature of really this is a journey, not a destination. And macrodose journeys or ceremonies are just part of it. They are not it. You are it. So really looking at this from the framework that life is the medicine, these are tools. All of them are tools. It's not just the psychedelic, like the practices you have with yourself. I have found meditators are equipped in a lot of ways to be with these experiences. So I do invite meditation, knowing that it is not always the easiest for someone to sit in silence, but there's some beautiful guided meditations out there that are wonderful places to start. A few other tools and resources. And I think this is part of finding the facilitator or the guide that resonates with you is like, these are the practices that I have found work for me. If I'm recommending something that's not within my scope, I think that's out of alignment. So for me, it's meditation. It's being in your body. And that can be through yoga. That can be through, walking, conscious consumption. If someone is moving in the direction, it's like, what are you feeding yourself? And often we think of that as like the food that we're consuming or whatever that may be. But like, what are you reading? What are you listening to? What kind of conversations are you in? And just being very intentional about that. And then I think gratitude and journaling go a long way. For me, like a gratitude practice is a really wonderful way to just see what's good in your life, especially if you're in a place of saying, I want these things fixed. It's like also bringing in the light to balance out the shadow. So I think if someone is moving in that direction, my invitation would be like, look at your life as the medicine, and this is a journey. And then the ceremony itself is like a springboard to be able to deepen that. So that if someone is saying maybe in 6 months, then there are plenty of people to talk to that can give you insight into finding your own tools and resources that become your medicine, but knowing that's a personal journey as well.
Beautiful. Yeah. I have seen that in our practice, in our microdosing practice, gratitude practice and journaling too. Been very, very powerful. Even the people who think they're not journalers, it's something opens in them, and creative expression in all kinds is really, really beautiful to witness. Yeah. Are there things that you have noticed that people can remove from their life or practices that kind of impede their ultimate journey experience. Interestingly, like people ask all the time, like
Mhm.
who fails at microdosing? Like who fails, or what do people do to get in their way? And interestingly, one of the prominent themes I've seen with our microdosing practice is um, people who are exceptionally self-referential.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happens. Nothing
Yeah.
happens. And it's in the nothing happening that is often the message from
Sure.
nature to them, is their life is not in reciprocity
Hmm.
enough. If they're
Yeah.
going around life looking for to extract things and spirit experience things. So by coming to an honest place with that and shifting things, that is often the medicine
Yeah.
in the preparation for that
Hmm.
moment. So
Hmm.
yeah, can you speak to, having seen and witnessed many people at this point, some of the things that you can work on to shift to enable you to have a deeper experience later?
Yeah. Yeah. This is such a delicate question because I think it's so personal, and I don't want to pathologize anyone's experience. There are these things that have created our reality. And so I feel as though no matter if there's a resistance and if there is expectation of something that is going to change you, I think those are two big things. What is created in your mind, and that can show up in a lot of different ways. If you don't think it's going to work, if you don't think that, if you've already made the decision for yourself how it's going to be, I don't feel that this medicine is going to mirror that in a way that is supportive. In fact, often it'll mirror it in a way that makes you want to push it away. That's just how it works. So the more you can build in an openness and a curiosity, I think that that expands the possibility. But if you have the idea that I know exactly how this is going to be and I've got it all figured out, and if it's not my own, if I haven't come to the conclusion by my own agency and my own mind, then it's not right. I think that those are barriers, and just in general, yeah. So I also feel if someone's coming to a microdosing community, there is maybe somewhere deep in the subconscious a desire to break through some of those foundations. Uh, but again, the way that this medicine works is very personal. Uh, so if you're open to it, I think you'll find that there is a gift deep within. It's just sometimes it might not be that fun to unwrap.
Right, right. Oh, sweet. Shifting back to um, the relational aspect of these medicines.
Mhm.
Do you work one on one? Do you work with
Mhm.
couples? Do you work with groups? Can you talk a little bit about your experience with each of those, and from the context of someone who's looking to journey for the
Mhm.
first time, especially,
Sure.
what are the advantages of, say, a group with a friend or independently?
Yeah. So for me, I work primarily one on one. And in particular with mushrooms, I don't feel couples work is supportive for people to do their own individual work. So I think when someone is coming to this for the first time, especially if they really want to be able to do a deep dive, I think one on one offers that. There are very different energies between group work and individual. And I think that, as we see with ayahuasca, for example, that is done in group containers. And that is very powerful medicine. Whereas with mushrooms, I feel like if there are some deep personal things that are very vulnerable that you want to be able to explore, uh, often a one on one container can offer the safety to do that. Um, it's funny because it's not funny. It's, I was just speaking with a friend about potentially expanding into doing group work with them. and talking about using that as kind of a stepping stone for people who have done individual journeys that may be interested in starting to move in that direction. And one of the things that we're talking about is some of the things that have shown up for them at certain dosages. And, them working at the same dosage that I work in the container, and how much deeper it seems people go when it's one-on-one versus group. That's strictly anecdotal, but I do feel that there can also be safety in being around people that if you're just going in for medicine work. But the goal of the container that I want to co-create is between myself and another as they embark on their journey. So I also recommend people trust their calling, for example. If they're feeling like the container of a group is speaking to them, then trust that and get curious. And if they're feeling like one-on-one is what's speaking to them, then trust that too.
Thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely. Can you speak a bit for those people who are drawn to incorporate medicines into their lives and practices, share them with others in some respect, whether that's becoming a professional guide or that's just supporting family and friends or in a peer supportive role. Speak to what it's like to hold space as a single guide. There are some guides who hold space in tandem, right? As two guides. So can you speak a little bit to the energy dynamics of being solo as a space holder versus having disparate energies in the room?
Yeah. For me, what I do my best to embody is being just a vessel and allowing myself to be a channel for the energy that needs to flow to be able to flow. As we discussed prior, there are certain things that I want to infuse into the process, so that's already kind of baked in to where we're at when we get to the ceremony. For individuals who may want to go into holding space for friends, loved ones, family members, what I would invite is that there should be an inherent trust in the medicine that's built into it. I think that allows for you to be a calm presence no matter what shows up. There can be, and I'm a nurturer. I'm the type of person who wants, in my day-to-day life, want to make sure everyone's okay, want to make sure they feel comfortable. But when it comes to being in psychedelic spaces, sometimes the discomfort is what someone needs to be in. Sometimes they need to know that it's okay not to be okay. So instead of trying to take someone and be like, let's get you out of where you're at, sometimes that's necessary. But for the most part, if they want to go there, that's where they need to be. So I think the trust in the medicine and the kind of moving away from trying to fix goes a long way. And I don't say there's a tremendous amount of honor and reverence to holding space for another person. So just being a loving presence, just being a calm, loving presence for someone really goes a long way to allowing them to feel safe to go within themselves.
Thank you. I'd love to close with something you shared when you came to speak to our group last year. That too was very, very meaningful to a number of people who were about to embark on their journeys in the next day or so. Is that you said that the mushroom is always loving in her heart, and even if you have a difficult experience or a fearsome experience or challenging experience, the ultimate, it is always bending you toward your healing. Mm-hmm. It's always lovingness is behind it. And people really remarked in the days and weeks to follow how much that meant to them, was kind of holding that always in the backdrop of everything that happened, is knowing it was always meant to their highest potential and coming from a loving place. So thank you for sharing that. And I'd just love to close with your reflections on that or anything else you would love to share. Yeah.
One of the things that having had the opportunity to witness myself and so many others on this journey, if there is one thing that I could say has been the thread that I feel that if more people embodied as individuals and as a collective would be ultimately transformative, is a relationship to self-love. And when you have the desire to start seeing love starting within, then your life can change in ways that are just, it opens up everything energetically for you. And I have found that no matter what the struggle, loving oneself is often medicine that provides a tremendous amount of healing. So that would be, I think, what I would like to at least infuse as we bring this to a close.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And that, as I said in the beginning, it's apparent in all that you do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate you. So how can people find you ongoing? I would love, how can people find you in your guideship to contact you, and also Epic if you have a website for that?
Yeah. My website is journeyintopsychedelics.com. So journeyintopsychedelics.com, and there's a contact form. I should probably be more we're talking about how to balance. I don't really find social media as the way that I want to engage in this. So, I would hope maybe if someone asked, you would be willing to pass my information along too.
Absolutely. Yes.
And then epic.psychedelic.com. And that has a contact form, and we'll be posting when we're doing community events and such. So that's just EPIC, psychedelic.com. So those are two means to get in communication with me. And I welcome the opportunity to connect with people in whatever way feels like it would be in support of their journey.
Thank you so much, Brenna.
So much love for you, Casey. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Microdosing for Healing podcast. Are you ready to take the next step? Please visit us at microdosingforhealing.com to access our free Microdosing 101 workshop. In it, you'll learn more about our diverse community, our supportive group programs, and discover if earth medicine practice might be right for you. See you in the next episode.